Hey everybody, this is Perch. When you get a mail where the subject line is, do these dipshits realize they proved our point? Well, I mean, how can you not read that? For sure. Well, given I am a self-proclaimed industry, not insider, what is it? Industry pontificate. Anyway, whatever. Let's read this mail. It says, Dear Perch, they used Akira as an example of manga bending to our format to attract readers to a new type of comic in that of manga. 40 years later, and would you look at that, it worked. Obviously, it didn't take 40 years for manga to blow up, as we have multiple booms since then, but by changing their format, they attracted a couple new generations of readers down the line with stuff like Domu or Akira, or really any of the old Dark Horse line. Even today, manga are putting out some comics in our format, targeted at an American audience, which is a novel idea. If we could just get to a price point where parents aren't laughing and telling the child to put it back, that would be the last key to the puzzle. As you said, they have been working on better distribution. And we don't need to go back to the very beginning. I don't know anyone that is my age who started reading comics that way. And I mean seriously reading comics, not one your dad got you when you were 7, or the lucky kids with parents who bought them everything and everything they desired. Feels like there's a little bit of baggage there in that comment. Anyway, most of us came back around the time between Rebirth or New 52, and prior to doing so, we were recommended a pivotal run by a friend. As much as I hate to admit it, a godforsaken listicle. BuzzFeed. What has become of you? Anyway, I wish they would take the Mighty Marvel Masterworks, but do it in black and white. You could use any of Miller's earlier DD stuff, or The Man Without Fear. Giffen's humor holds up well. Still, so many of his comics would work for the manga audience. And maybe Byrne's Superman or Fantastic Four, Claremont's X-Men, Batman Year One, Long Halloween, and so many other semi-modern comics that kids would relate to more stylistically and still get edgier content so they don't feel pandered to. Where would you start? Please fix it, Perch. I can't fix shit. Anyway, look, okay, so that's the mail. Okay, so if I'm unpacking this back, if I want to kind of rewind it a little bit, what this writer is describing is that once upon a time, there was this idea that European comics and, Asian comics, mainly Japanese comics, were trying to break into the market. And so there was this kind of in the 80s format choice, late 80s, early 90s format choice, where a bunch of Japanese comics were kind of reprinted and, formatted, front to back, reading the right way, kind of reapplied. And in some cases, like with some of the Rumiko Takahashi stuff, they downplayed the heavy Japanese cultural elements and either changed the name or just kind of shuffled it around a little bit so it was more Western friendly. And in some cases included a little glossary in the comic explaining what some of this crap meant. I remember that Ranma One Half and Meisen Aikoku did this kind of successfully. They included pages in the manga of kind of how stuff, what this stuff meant. Like, what was the Japanese significance to this stuff? And they basically said, the U.S. comic market was booming, so we're going to print stuff in a Western comic size and all the rest. And it was successful. It got material out there. It seeded kind of a certain kind of cultural understanding. And kind of notably, a lot of European comics did not do that. They were holdups who were trying to maintain the format that kind of European comics were more comfortable with and familiar with, and you did not see the same transition of page type and elements for European books. And I mean, a number of things happened. It wasn't just the format alone, but it is pretty clear that at least some of that research, understand, and try and adapt to the market you want to go big in was smart. It was successful, and it worked. It worked quite well. Today, of course, the kind of everything is flipped, where manga today has better shelf presence. And when I say shelf presence, I mean outside a local comic shop. I mean in the mass market. It's got a price point that works. It's all told, it's going quite well. And what dawned on me, because one of the excuses you hear a lot from the Western comic publishers is like, well, we're going to need to at least reboot the comic. We need to make it movie friendly because, American audiences, they are dumb as shit. And they're not going to be able to understand this convoluted continuity and story arcs and everything else is going to be really, really hard. And I think the piece that Japanese comics, and now we are starting to very slowly see more European comics come over, what we're learning is perhaps not a surprising lesson, which is, hey, it turns out that people aren't complete idiots. And if the story is engaging and exciting and entertaining, they will, they'll figure it out. They'll struggle. I've used the same thing. We talked about that in that Keith Giffen, the tribute, where the 5 years later from Legion, it is dense. It is hard to figure out, but it is not impossible. And if the story, the type of story, kind of the sci-fi aspects of it grab you, you'll figure it out. You'll get there, no problem. A friend recently tried to read it, wasn't for them, but I'm paraphrasing here, wasn't because it was just too impossible for our pea brains to understand. It was that the content, the tone didn't catch, and that's perfectly fine. Lots of things don't catch. But I think that manga proved pretty aggressively that is absolutely a red herring. It's just not true. If the content is exciting, if the material engages people, catches people, there isn't a concern. People will figure it out. It will do just fine. People will struggle through. And in many cases, if you look at manga now, you've got a lot of the stuff that's sold on the shelf is, reads backwards, reads traditional Japanese style. They're not trying to reformat it. They're no longer kind of removing some of the the Asian elements, replacing with Western analogs. They're just letting it be. And people are figuring it out. More importantly, you have stories like My Hero Academia, and you have stories like One Piece. One Piece has well over 1,000 chapters, and yet somehow it is able to attract new readers. They haven't had to reboot it yet. They haven't had to go back and to do a all new, all different Luffy. It's it's just taking. It's working, and I think that's the key here. Just put out the comic, make it entertaining. Just worry a little bit less about if people are going to be able to figure it out or not, because it turns out most people are bright and they will figure it out, and they do figure it out. And that's exactly what we have happening. So, the history lesson here is, once upon a time, manga wanted to sell better in the Western market. The more popular book that was distributed were the Western comics, were Marvel, DC, those books. Those were by far selling better in more places, far more visibility than whatever manga was doing. Manga adapted to it. Now, fast forward 40 years, and it turns out Western comics need to adapt to manga, or continue to take the hardest possible path. It just blows me away, the kind of the excuses of, well, we're working hard. That's nice, but working hard also needs to come with progress. You can't just work hard. There's got to be a little bit more to the table than that. And this is just how we've always done it, it's a stupid reason. Anyone who's lived through disruption will tell you. We've talked about on this channel a lot. You got to look at what's popular, and when you got to adapt. And look, if Marvel and DC aren't going to do it, then shout out to all of you, who, whatever you're doing, whether you're doing your crowdfunded approach, whether you got an indie comics company, whether you want to mid-tier comic companies, a lot of people listen. Look, this is what you should do. Learn. Do a little bit of market research, not your local comic shop. I mean, certainly go there. Certainly ask people what they're interested in. Certainly pay attention to what's selling and not selling. Absolutely. Don't stop doing that. But in addition, you're going to need to stop by a Target, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, dollar store, wherever it happens to be, and do a little bit of research. What's selling? What's there? Why is it there? What commonality do you see? And you're going to need to adapt. And yes, that means putting out some books. I mean, if you're Mark Miller right now, he's got some books that, are 4 or 5 issue series, 6 issue series. He'd be insane not to print those black and white in a Tankobon format. Big Game absolutely needs to be put out that way. Absolutely. It's free money. And, you're just going to move the audience. Anyway, learn from the past, or, get screwed. Thanks for listening.